Hey guys, I wanted to come on here because we live in a system of white supremacy that operates under the notion that um, being white is superior to being black. There have even been articles talking about scientists have proved that white people are superior to black people. We know this is a bunch of bullshit. We know that there's not, but you have a lot of them running around despite their melanin deficiency, their struggle genes, their 6,000 bad disease genes, their burning in the sun, their mutations, their head lice, their inability to procreate, and they're still believing that somehow it's better to be white. Understand that the system of white supremacy is simply a make-believe reality in which white people are able to overcompensate for their genetic inferiority with social superiority, okay? Because realistically and biologically and genetically, they are at a disadvantage of being white. Okay, they are at a disadvantage, okay? But yet they run around with this notion as if there's tons of evidence from reputable sources, which we'll go on this and try to find some of them. This is why I want to pull up the Google search, because they operate as if there's actually some benefit to being white. Now, the thing of it is not only do white people believe this, but people globally believe this as well. Not just black people, but all non-white people globally strive to be white in some way, whether it's lightening their skin or finding other features of whiteness. They do this and reinforce the myth of white supremacy, when in reality, nature says there's nothing beneficial to being white. This is why they have to put up a bunch of social benefits, because they could sit up here and say, oh, we're supreme, we're superior. But nature is always going to remind them that that's not true. You cannot trick nature into believing that you are supreme, but you can trick people into believing that you're supreme. So simply them saying they're supreme isn't going to make them not burn in the sun, okay? Simply saying they're supreme isn't going to reduce their sperm count. It's simply saying they're supreme isn't going to get rid of those 6,000 bad disease genes in Europeans, okay? Saying they're supreme isn't going to take away the fact that they have the most diseases, genetic diseases. They have the most birth defects. And we already know they're dying out. More of them are dying than being born because they have a hard time procreating. The women's womb is basically dust. Men have a 60% decrease in sperm. So let's look to YouTube. They said there's about 3,760,000 results. So we're just going to kind of scroll over here, try to see as far as we can some reputable sources that might be telling you the advantages. Now, these are forums and threads. So when you look on here, it says twcenter.net forums, Quora forums. So there's no, nothing. This says how Europeans evolved white skin, but it's not talking about any type of benefits to it. It says advantages to being white, history form, okay? What science says about race and genetics, but it doesn't tell you, like, this isn't going to necessarily tell you if it's better. Now, you can look on here right now and it will say whites are genetically weaker than blacks, study finds. So even though you're putting in the advantages of being white, you see something saying there isn't. It says white Americans are both genetically weaker and less diverse than their black compatriots, a Cornell University study finds. Now, I already went over this. So this is a Fox News, and they're citing Cornell University. So this will be a reputable source. But let's continue. Scientists find a DNA change that accounts for white skin. And they'll tell you, scientists said yesterday that they have discovered a tiny genetic mutation that largely explains the appearance of white skin in human tens of thousands, a change of just one letter of DNA code out of 3.1 billion letters in the human genome. Okay, so we could look over that. But the reality of it is that that's not a benefit, because the genetic mutation isn't a benefit. And then it says 10 examples that prove white privilege protects white people. Now, white privilege is a social construct. It's not genetic. And look, even if you go down here, disadvantages of being Caucasian, okay? you see them looking, where do white people originate? Did white people come from black people? Where did white people come from in the Bible? Okay. When did white people first appear? Now, we could go to some of those, but you don't see. Now, let's look at their little forum. We'll look at the forum and see what white people are saying and see what they say. Now, they're going to say a minority of European descent people can be actually basically immune to catching the most commonly spread form of HIV. No, they don't, because the highest rate of HIV is actually in Europe. It's because of a mutation on the CCR5 receptor, which is where HIV enters. If a person carries one mutation there, which up to 10 or 15% of people with European ancestry carry, they can have a greater resistance against HIV progressing to AIDS. Okay, first of all, first of all, this dude is simply saying what he thinks, which is it's actually a lie. But the thing of it is the biggest rate of HIV is actually in Europe. So that's just a reality of what it is. But let's see if anybody else are saying anything. Because they're talking about, in addition to Michael Whelan's point about vitamin D, white people are less vulnerable to leprosy than some other groups. Whiteness is leprosy, and have a good chance of being able to drink unprocessed milk without getting diarrhea. I want you guys to understand the mentality here, because nobody should be drinking cow's milk anyway. So they're saying, oh, if we drink cow's milk, we won't get diarrhea. Wouldn't that make you more of an animal than anything? Because if you're immune to drinking animal's milk, that must mean you must be an animal, because no human should be drinking milk. But their common thing, and then look, dairy products. Caucasians have the highest percentage in population, which, by the way, none of these are genetic. These are actually environmental, because even the one with AIDS isn't genetic, it's environmental. AIDS and HIV had to be created. HIV was created. So they're telling you right here, number one, they don't know what biological means. Number one, they don't know that, because all of these are created. Anything that doesn't occur in nature is an environmental cause. So even HIV is an environmental cause, and white people actually have the highest rate of that in Europe. Cow's milk is an environmental cause, so you just wouldn't even mention any of that. And lactose persistence, this means we can drink milk and eat dairy products even as adults. Well, dairy products are environmental, so that doesn't have anything to do, which you shouldn't be drinking. Humans shouldn't be consuming dairy anyway. But this is their mentality and what they believe is beneficial. Now, they're going to say, off the top of my head, the ones I thought of was diabetes and sickle cell, which they both get. These two diseases are more common in black folks. However, we get shit like skin cancer and Down syndrome in their places, so both have pros and cons. No, not really, because the thing of it is again, diabetes is environmental. It depends on how you eat, and everyone gets sickle cell. So sickle cell isn't based on your race. It's based on the region that you're in and whether you have malaria. Yeah, it is more common in black people because Africans on the continent. So that's where it originated at. But the thing of it is that wouldn't pose a genetic benefit because they get it too. And then they'll sit up here and they'll talk about vitamin D. Like he's going to say, in the temperature zone, light-skinned people absorb more sunlight and can manufacture vitamin D. It is very likely the light skin evolved in the temperature zone areas. This is their most common go-to thing. Vitamin D comes from UV rays, okay? Even when it's cold and rainy outside and the sun is not even present, white people will burn in the sun. I know because they spray chemtrails here consistently even when it's rainy, because they're not blocking the sun, they're blocking UV rays that come from the sun. So the minute that they lather on that sunscreen, mind you, none of them have even them absorbing vitamin D better is simply a theory. This hasn't been confirmed. This is a theory. Even if that was the case, let's say hypothetically it's true they do absorb vitamin D better. The minute that they lather on sunscreen, they're not absorbing it, because you're not going to wear sunscreen that blocks UV rays and still get vitamin D that comes from UV rays. So even right here, you can just throw this out of the window and you can assume and you can conclude there's absolutely no benefit to being white, none at all, because if you can't be in the UV rays, you can't get vitamin D from it. And you would think that they would know, know this. Okay, now let's see what this person is saying, because they put something on here, so we'll see. But notice how you can't get any conclusive answers about any biological benefits to being white, and that's because they are none. Now let's look at this where it says skin color, no hiding in the dark. Melanoma is the most common in light-skinned people, but it can also affect those with darker pigments. Finding out why would help to explain the disease's origins. The thing of it is no, Black people don't get any of this. Darker skin contains more melanin. We already know that, a pigment that protects against ultraviolet rays. Most melanomas in white people can be linked to mutations caused by sun exposure, whereas at least half of melanomas in Black people occur on areas not exposed to the sun. So that means Black people are not getting sun cancer. It's coming from somewhere else. But although melanoma in dark-skinned people is rare, it's highly lethal. The 5-year survival rate of an African-American diagnosed with melanoma is 73% compared with 91% in Caucasians. That's because most Black people are poor. They don't have access to the health care or cancer treatment. Okay? And you wouldn't really need to do any type of testing on Black people in melanoma if they don't have it. So that's why you would only be able to test those who have it to find out. You wouldn't be able to test the other one. It says melanoma rates have jumped in white people over the past 30 years, but they have stayed flat in people of color. A white person in the United States has a 1 in 50 chance of developing melanoma, compared with just 1 in a 1,000 chance for a Black person. So that right there tells you it's extremely rare. And even when Black people get melanoma, it's not from the sun. So that means Black people are not getting cancer from being out in the sun. These struggle genes who believe they are superior are. But I want to go back to the Google search to see if we can find anything that will tell us one benefit to being white. Now, so far we know a bunch of these are simply blogs. Okay. But let's see if we go back on some of these, because we're not going to find any. Look, what is the evolutionary advantage of having pale skin? So this is Reddit. We already know that is. So we'll look over that and see something. White people's fear of genetic annihilation. Okay, so nothing. You can't find anything that will tell you that there is any benefit at all. Nothing that will tell you that there is one benefit to being white. Okay, you say mixed race, pretty face. The genetic advantage of being multiracial, which, keep in mind, the genetic advantages go to white people when they mix with Black people, because you're mixing good genes in there. Caucasian diseases, list of dangers unique to being white, the genetic basis of common diseases, which you're going to see them white, the surprising health benefits of being a ginger. There isn't any. Look, they can produce their own vitamin D. Like, you always see this. People born to genetically diverse parents, i.e. mixing with Black, a genetic study of the sprint phenomenon. So you can't, we're going 4 pages into this Google search and we can't find anything to find anything about being white. Now, they're still talking about exercises on racism, which any benefit that comes to white people is going to be socially. Confessions of a straight white male. Now, being a straight white male has absolutely given me huge advantages, but these are socially. Breeding between the lines, why interracial people are healthier. Okay, so you just don't, nothing, basically. We could go over all 10 of these and you still would not find anything that's going to tell you one benefit to being white, genetic, none of them. You're just, there's nothing. And so whenever you guys hear, okay, now we can look at a list of diseases dangerous to being white. Keep in mind, this comes up under the search of me saying, what are the benefits to being white? So they won't tell you any genetic benefits, but they'll tell you that a whole slew of them. Now, list to the risk of Caucasians, including illnesses, disorders, ailments, maladies, and diseases associated with the Caucasian race. What are the dangers unique to being Caucasian? The list includes genetic disorders and chronic conditions linked to Caucasians by the medical and science community through research. List items include bladder cancer, chronic fatigue syndrome, and more. The illnesses and medical conditions are listed in alphabetical order, and you can sort them by column. While many of the diseases relate to being Caucasian, having only been suggested through correlation, a few diseases are caused by being Caucasian and do not exist without the risk factor. Among other potential problems, being Caucasian can lead to harmful conditions. Okay, so they're telling you right now, there's a list of things, and these are the lists of it: bladder cancer, brain tumor, breast cancer, chronic fatigue, Crohn's disease, endometriosis. Endometriosis is a big problem they have now. This is where eggs don't stick to the lining of their uterus. That's what endometriosis is. HELLP syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, Kaposi sarcoma, macular degeneration, melanoma, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pectus excavatum, polymyalgia rheumatica, pyloric, look, the list of the really, skin cancer, spina bifida, testicular cancer, thyroid cancer, ulcerative colitis, whatever that is, urethral syndrome, urolithiasis. Now understand that they said that these right here are specific to being white, okay? So, and I might do a public video just on this unique risk to being Caucasian. I might I think I'm going to do a video on this and just show some things. But there it is, you guys. Google, which is white owned, cannot even produce one thing that would suggest that there is any benefit beyond socially to being white. So whenever you guys hear one of them say something like this, oh, well, white is better, please do ask them, in what ways, to name one genetic benefit of being white. Just one. That's all they have to do. One genetic benefit. Because understand, the system of white supremacy is going to crumble eventually. It's unnatural. The reason why they have that system of white supremacy intact is because they already know this. They already know there's no biological benefit to being white. There's no genetic benefit. So they simply created a social benefit to it. Multiple social benefits. And in order for them to even have social benefits, they have to have other people around who they can deprive of those same benefits. That's how the system of white supremacy works. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next one.